Call Keith Locke.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Green Party is supporting this bill. It modernises and normalises a lot of the arrangements around our Governor-General in terms of making the income of the Governor-General taxable and things like that. I tried to modernise the bill even further, trying to moved an amendment to try and remove the specification in the bill that the Governor-General will have the use of chauffeured cars when he or she no longer holds offices of Governor-General. That seemed to be a bit excessive to specify that in legislation. Unfortunately, it only gained the Green votes. And I tried to move another two amendments on Supplementary Order Paper 173, which arose out of submissions to the Select Committee. There were 3 submissions to the Select Committee and 2 oral submissions. And the 2 oral submissions, both they were by the Republican movement, represented by Lewis Holden and Dean Knight, and also a submission by Derek Round. These 2 oral submissions both proposed that the nomination to the monarch for Governor-General be from 75% of the Parliament rather than just determined by the government of the day. But unfortunately that didn't proceed to a vote in the committee stages because although I did move a motion to say that it be an instruction to the committee on the Governor-General bill that to have the power to consider, and if it thinks fit, adopt the amendments set out on SOP number 173. Unfortunately, that wasn't supported by other parties in the House because it was just replacing, making the procedures more democratic. And I didn't. It was said by the Labor members that they couldn't vote for it, even though they were a bit sympathetic to those amendments, because they'd have to be referred back to submitters, and another lot of submissions called. Well, it's a pity that if that was the case, they didn't, when they were on the Select Committee, push for that extra submission process to take place. Now, the first part of my SOP, which was new clause 4A on the appointment of the Governor-General, simply read, the Governor-General is appointed by the Sovereign on the recommendation of the House of Representatives. The recommendation must be agreed to by at least 75% of all members of Parliament. A very simple proposal, and I wish it had been voted on. The second part of the SOP 173 was clearly, in my view, in all respects, very relevant to the bill. This was also a proposal that came from the written and oral submission by the Republican movement, although it must be said that neither of the 2 proposals they raised were specifically Republican. They were just democratising the institution of the Governor-General in terms of the recommendation to the Queen, and in the second part of the SOP, the term of appointment of the Governor-General. It was a new clause 5A, term of appointment of Governor-General. 1, the Governor-General is to be appointed for a term not exceeding 5 years, and 2, a person who has been appointed as Governor-General cannot be reappointed as Governor-General. And I thought that was quite important because there's no set term for Governor-General in legislation, and nothing to stop Governor-Generals being reappointed forever. So surely, and it was very relevant to the bill because in the bill itself there was a section on annuities, and clearly annuities should be based to the length of service. In fact, in Clause 8 of the bill, annuity for former Governor-General, it does say that to get an annuity you've got to complete it 2 years or more. What happens if the government appointed a Governor-General for 1 year? They'd miss out on the annuity altogether. And there's absolutely nothing to stop, in the present legislation, to stop a government appointing Governor-General for 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, 10 years. It could be anything because there's no legislative control over that. So it mucks up the whole Clause 8 on annuities, not to have a specified term of the Governor-General. So I think that clearly, and the other thing is in the bill it talks about the remuneration authority and how that's determining things, the level of the annuity for former Governor-Generals or their spouses if the Governor-General dies early on. And that's good, because one of the things the Green Party's been proposing is a greater role for the remuneration authority in determining MPs' salaries and allowances and putting them all together, giving it over to the Governor-General rather than us determining things ourselves. And in that context, with all this debate about perks and MPs determining their own perks, it does seem very odd, this section 11 of the bill, where we as MPs are voting for particular specified perks for the Governor-General, that domestic travel and the use of chauffeured cars, even going down to that detail, and the use of chauffeured cars when he or she no longer holds the office of Governor-General. That's repeating the error we're making in relation to our own salaries and allowance. It's not a question, there's an interjection there, mean-spirited. It's not a question of being mean-spirited, and I'm not saying that the Governor-General does not deserve some consideration of free travel. If, as former Governor-General, they're living in Auckland, they have to go to a function in Christchurch in their role as former Governor-General. I'm not saying their travel costs shouldn't be covered in some respect, but to actually specify it as chauffeur-driven cars is going beyond, I think, our democratic mandate, particularly in this era when there's so much concentration on privileges. And it is true that in terms of travel privileges, I think the Mayor of Wellington, the new Green Mayor of Wellington, Celia Wade-Brown, is setting the standard. When she met Hillary Clinton the other day, she didn't go to the expense of, charging up a big bill for a taxi to the Wellington City Council. She biked around to Wellington Airport to meet Hillary Clinton. I think that set a very good example, and there is a parallel here that we want to be, we can specify in general that there should be entitlement to travel, but exactly what that is should be left up to the remuneration authority. That's all I'm saying. So overall, yes, we are modernising the role of the Governor-General. Phil Twyford talked about is this a preparation for moving to a republic. Personally, of course, as people know, I had a bill that unfortunately didn't succeed that would have moved us to a larger discussion of whether we should have a referendum on a republic. This bill isn't particularly on a republic at all, but it is true that Republicans are often interested in democracy and democratising institutions, which is why I'm personally quite keen on this bill, and wishing it could have gone a bit further. It's part of the democratic constitutional debate that we're involved in day by day. So with those few words, the Green Party will be supporting this bill, and we only hope to have gone a bit further. Thank you.
Te Ura Flavel.